So today is the 250th anniversary of the start of the American Revolution, and for that anniversary, I want to get into what exactly happened here in Southeast Michigan during that conflict. Now, I have to start off with the fact that Metro Detroit during the Revolution was firmly British territory. The 13 American colonies didn't functionally go any further west than the Appalachian Mountains. Not only was Detroit firmly British territory, but it was also the British center of military operations for this whole region, stretching across not only the Midwest, but the Upper South as well. Now, if you're the British military authorities in Detroit, one of the things that you're responsible for enforcing is the Proclamation Line of 1763, which basically says that European settlers are not supposed to go into native lands west of the Appalachian Mountains. This ended up being one of those many things that really pissed off American colonists versus the British government. Now, in Detroit, the man who was in charge was Henry Hamilton, who was a lieutenant governor of the Quebec colony. He was effectively functionally the governor of Michigan and the mayor of Detroit in one. To Americans, he became rather infamous because he would supply Native American raiding parties with weapons and issue bounties for scalps of basically European settlers in areas like Kentucky. Now, you got to remember, Hamilton was basically just following orders, and you also got to remember the fact that those European settlers in Kentucky are basically illegal immigrants. They're breaking British law, crossing the Appalachian Mountains, and stealing Native American land. You also have to understand that most of the British troops that were on this continent in the 1770s were out east, and so what Hamilton had to enforce British authority was Native Americans. So a couple big military campaigns happened in this region during the Revolution. In one, Henry Hamilton leads a force of the British down to what is now Vincennes, Indiana, and faces off against George Rogers Clark, where he ends up losing. Now in 1779, the Continental Army constructs Fort Laurens in eastern Ohio, which was built to be an eventual staging point for a future attack on Detroit. A force of British and Native Americans attempt to try and capture the fort and eventually fail, but the fort is basically so crappy that the Continental Army eventually abandons it anyways. Now, the most tragic incident happened in 1782 in eastern Ohio at a place called Gnadenhutten. A group of Moravian Christian Lenape Native Americans were wholesale murdered by some Pennsylvania militiamen. Later that year, Continental Army Colonel William Crawford disastrously fails in a military expedition against native villages in the Sandusky River area. He is tortured and burned to death effectively as retribution for the one massacre.